Right, welcome to the Crafty Mariana Podcast. I am your host, Mariana, former corporate marketing girly turned crafting workshop host. And if you ever thought, can my crafts actually make money? Then this is the show for you. Each episode, I share stories from creative entrepreneurs who dare to think a little bit different and went beyond the make and sell model, along with lessons from my own journey building a six-figure workshop business. You can expect honest conversations about what it really takes to build a creative business. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's dive in. And now we are being recorded and hopefully everything is working. I don't see the uploading thing yet. Actual recording is a higher quality. That's what he's telling me. Okay. I think we are recording and everything. Oh, I see the uploading now. Awesome.
I see it too. Perfect.
Amazing. So welcome, Meagan from Art Girl to the Crafty Mariana Podcast. I am very excited that you are here. You are the first person creative that I'm interviewing, and I am not an interviewer. If anything, I'm like a marketing person. So, so I'm not very good at doing this. So if you are listening and you're like, whoa, what a terrible interview, then it's because I'm not a journalist. But Meagan is a really, really cool creative that I've been obsessing about for the last, I don't know, it feels like 6 months, but it might have been 3. But I think I came across Meagan from Art Girl on Instagram because this whole concept of making bad art, and I was like, oh my gosh, this just speaks to me so much because I have been artsy and creative since a very young age, but I didn't study art. I don't consider myself an artist, and I don't think that you have to consider yourself an artist to create something. And I just love the concept so much that I started following. And then when I decided to create this podcast, I was like, the whole point of the podcast was to interview people. I just figured that, people are busy, so I might as well just do all the episodes to keep the thing alive. But the whole point is to interview people. So I'm here today with Meagan from Art Girl. If you don't know her, well, you should go check it out. And I've got some questions, and we're going to have a chat, and hopefully people enjoy our chat. So I feel like I've done a very bad job describing Meagan because she's just so awesome. And from what I understand of what Art Girl is, it's a mix of in-person events / an online membership for people to explore their creative side in a very relaxed sort of it's kind of to connect with your sort of intuition and creativity, and not to create this beautiful piece of art. It's literally just exercises for people to explore just creating something and logging off. But yeah. I will let Meagan explain what she does. So I'll pass it on to Meagan. Meagan, do you want to talk a little bit about what is Art Girl and what do you do?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so honored to be the first guest on the Crafty Mariana Podcast. I am so happy to be here. Art Girl is a creative community. You described it perfectly, where we use art and creativity as a tool for deeper connections to self and community. So I am an artist. I'm also an educator, a tarot reader, an intuitive, a facilitator, an event planner. And I started Art Girl out of a personal need for a space to be creative where you're not necessarily trying to make anything good or specific. And even though I do believe there's a place for that, and there are plenty of amazing resources and places you can go where you can learn how to use watercolors, you can learn about composition and different mediums and things like that, I think that's amazing. But Art Girl is a space where your innate creativity is in the driver's seat, and the process and the creative act are emphasized as tools of self-discovery and self-connection and self-care rather than focusing on the end product. So when you come to an Art Girl event, there's prompts, there's lots of guardrails, but at the end of the day, what you're really there to do is experience the creative act, practice the art of self-expression, with the goal of connecting more deeply to yourself and thus more deeply to your community and the people around you.
It makes total sense. It sounds like I should buy a ticket to New York and go to one of your events.
Please, I would love that.
Which I'm like secretly planning a trip. I haven't bought any tickets, but it might actually happen this year, but I should probably not talk about it.
Well,
Because I don't
offline,
want to
we can
jinx it.
discuss. That would be
Yeah,
so fun to do
a
a
hundred
little.
percent, 100%. So when did I guess you just said that you are an artist, so you kind of come from an art background? Like, did you study it or?
Yeah, I studied art in college. I always say I've always been creative. I had a very creative mother growing up, and so we were always doing art projects, and I was really encouraged to express myself as a child, which I'm so lucky for. And I studied art in college. I did art and art history. But while I was in college, and I don't think this is a unique experience, but while I was in college, there were some of my classmates, like a couple of them, that were sort of pegged by our professors as the prodigies. Like, these are the ones that are good. These are like
Yeah.
the best ones. They're always like, I don't know, praised by the professors. And not to say that I was ever like talked down to. No professor was ever like mean about me and my art, but I was just never really like acknowledged. They were kind of like, "Oh, you're fine. Like you just don't really
Yeah.
have it." You know, there was
Yeah.
like your composition is okay. These pieces are like they're fine, but there was no real like encouragement. Like, yes, you should pursue this as a career, and that comes from a place of a professor knows that it is really difficult to make money and sustain a life as an artist that's selling their work, and that's just unfortunately true, even though we could talk for hours about how that shouldn't be true. And at the end of college, I remember at my college graduation, the dean of the School of Art and Art History said to our entire class, 90% of you will not end up working in the arts. But, and, his point was that you've still gotten this great education that will further you in your life. But I was like shocked by that and so discouraged because I loved art and I wanted to be creating. But that kind of I graduated into this world where I did not think that my version of art was worthy of sustaining me or like making a living. So I went into the admin side of the art world and I worked in museums and galleries for 10 years and I did lots of really, really cool work, interpretation work, exhibition work to help kind of bring like educational work to help people connect to the exhibitions that were on view. And I did that with joy and so much love. And I feel so grateful for those 10 years that I got to work with these amazing pieces of art and amazing people. But one thing I noticed is when you're teaching in a museum setting, there's pieces that are good because they're in the museum. And then there's the stuff that you create. And so when I worked with teenagers and college students, which I did a lot, I started to notice this like rift between the creativity of the teenagers and the perceived creativity of what they were looking at and being inspired by on view at the museum. And I heard all the time, like, oh, I'm not creative. I can't do that. I'm not creative. And I just was like, yeah, you are. Like, drawing is a skill that you can learn, but creativity is innate. Everyone can create something. So I more and more was like, something is like backwards here. I want to emphasize the process, the creativity in every person and not put them on a scale. Like one person's creativity is not more valid than another's. So I ended up leaving the museum world. I was listening to your episode where you tell your story, and my story is kind of like that too. We can skip over all the ups and downs, ups and downs. I ended up leaving the museum world to start Art Girl in 2002. So it's not been that long, and I really had the goal of just creating a space where creativity was emphasized as a self-care tool, not as something to be commodified necessarily or used for any other purpose than getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
So that was a very long-winded answer. But
No, that's totally okay. I feel like because the next few questions that I have on my notes, I feel like you've kind of answered to a lot of those. So, and it all makes sense. I mean, at least for me, it did. So hopefully it's to other people as well. And I find it like just so fascinating to understand people's backgrounds, and particularly what you've done or what you're doing with Art Girl. Like, it's very similar to what I wanted to do with my workshops because it's bridging that gap between, yes, okay, there's these people who are professional artists, and some people, I don't know how it works because I didn't study art, but some people rate it in there's, like the Picassos, and then there is the contemporary artists. And for some reason, some are better than others, and I don't really understand why that is because I guess I didn't study art or composition.
yeah,
But then there's also just, the act of creating a candle and mixing scents that resonate with you and you creating something, or just drawing, stick figures on a piece of paper. In
totally.
You don't have to rate it. It's like you're just creating. And I saw a lot when I started my workshops that people people want to create something, but I feel like art is very gate kept in communicated as like this sort of ultimate thing that you're gonna do. While I think if you make it like way more chilled, people are like, yeah, we're just gonna, do some creative stuff and have a drink.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
We
yeah,
all, every single child expresses themselves in some way. It's like, it's human nature. We've all made art when we were kids, coloring, scribbling, dancing, making sandcastles, like whatever
yeah,
it was, that like innate drive to create is within us all. And it's not to make money. Like you, when you're a kid, you don't know what money is. You're like, I
yeah,
just want to express myself and I want to be seen in that act. And that gets lost so easily in
yeah,
so many of us. Even
yeah,
even artists struggle with this, There
yeah.
for other reasons. But
Somewhere
yes.
along the way, someone decided to monetize it, and then parameters had to be made for this monetization of art. But yeah, I totally feel you. I feel like we have very similar. I mean, I guess art. When I see Art Girl on social media, which we can talk about next, I feel like it's very different to my workshop business. But sort of the motivation behind it is similar. Even though I don't come from an art background or whatsoever, I studied business. And it was so interesting to me when you were talking about how at your graduation, the dean said that only 90%, 90 something percent wasn't going to work in art. And I find it really interesting because I went to university for business and marketing, but it was mostly because around 17, 18 years old, I was highly aware that, whatever I was going to study, I would have to get a job afterwards. Because I feel like if I'd study something that I was interested in, would be around either philosophy or art or something like that.
Yeah,
And
totally.
when I picked something to study, I was like, okay, I actually don't care so much what I'm going to study. I'm just going to pick the university that has the highest employability rate. And I picked the
Wow.
one I went to because it has like an 80 something percent of students who finish get a job within the first 3 months. And I was like, okay, I guess that's for me.
Yeah, you're like perfect.
But, but throughout these years of doing uni and my first few jobs, I kind of completely, I guess, not completely shut my creativity because I think there is a bit of creativity involved in in marketing and what I do, but
Absolutely.
arts and crafts in doing something or even a business around it, like there was not on my radar at all. I
Yeah.
didn't thought that could work.
Yeah, and then look, it's like there's
Yeah.
so the opportunities are abundant with
Yeah,
art
I
here.
know. I know. It's been a crazy journey. I guess
Yeah.
we started around a similar time because you said you started Art Girl in 2022.
Yeah, yes. And it started really as a newsletter. When I left my corporate job in the last museum I worked at, I had the intention of creating a creative consultancy business. I was really
Okay.
interested in using creativity to help people cope with burnout, which was also kind of part of my story. I was really burnt out and kind of reacquainted myself with my creativity as a tool for coping. This was also like COVID times when everyone was kind of like, oh my God, what's going on with my life and the world? It was such a
Yeah.
crazy time for us all. And I started Art Girl as a newsletter to just kind of like occupy myself a little bit while I was building. And it's funny, you have a business background. I don't have any business, I don't have any formal business background. And so, but sometimes I think that's to my benefit because
Yeah.
otherwise I don't know that I would have started this,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, again, I'm definitely working on some skills, but I thought I would start like a corporate consulting business where I would go into offices and lead workshops to explain and teach people about the science of why creativity is such an important tool for dealing with burnout, for increasing productivity, like all the buzzy things that I was kind of around when I was working full time and in the corporate world. And so I started Art Girl as a newsletter based on my own interests, and it was about the intersection of art and spirituality. And I just liked writing. It was like fun. I didn't write that many I didn't do that many of them, but I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and he had a restaurant in my neighborhood that he ran at the time, so offered me to come run a workshop. He was like, "Why don't you just try it? Like as you're trying, I was feeling stuck. I like didn't know how to get corporate clients, and he's like, just come and try this." And so I did, and I loved it, and I couldn't believe how amazing it felt to bring like community members in to have people just creating art. And I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this, the feeling of having a workshop. And of course that first one was like a lot of my friends came to support, but also there were people that I didn't know that just found it on social media, and that was like the coolest feeling ever. And then
Yeah.
having there's still that was in the summer of 2022, and there's still a lot of people from that very first workshop that are in my membership program now that come to events all the time that I would call friends at this point
Yeah. Yeah.
because
That's so cool.
of that. And it's kind of like you
Yeah.
just trust your intuition a little bit, and then you never
Yeah.
know what's going to happen.
That is so cool. There's two things there that you said that I'm like just ringing a bell so much to me. The first one is like your background not being in business. I think that it could, of course, having a business background, it comes handy in a lot of things because a lot of the terms and names of things you kind of or recognize already because you kind of studied. Even though in practicality it always works very different than what you study.
Yeah.
But I feel like in business so much, like for me, sometimes I get a bit too caught up in the numbers in making it work numbers wise before taking the leap. And I've noticed that with like opening my own studio as well. Like for me, the numbers have to make sense before I take a leap. But sometimes you have to take the leap and then the numbers follow. And
Yeah.
I find that coming from a business background, I find it really hard to do. Um,
Yeah, because you've been
because,
trained
yeah,
to
yeah,
make sure the numbers work.
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. But so I think that having that sort of, I wouldn't call naivete or innocence because it's not that, but I don't know the English word for it, but having that sort of unawareness of the business side of things sometimes power you through to just make it work,
Yeah.
which is exactly what you did and exactly what so many other
I'm
people
still
do.
doing.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing you said about hosting the first workshop, like I completely relate because I remember perfectly the first workshop that I've hosted, and that was back when I was doing workshops with a friend of mine. And to be completely honest, like, and I've talked about that on social media, when I first started these sort of workshops, for me, the most exciting part was, my friend had already been doing it at a small scale but kind of consistent throughout a year. And when I saw what she was doing, I was like, this is such an interesting marketing case study. Like, can I grow this very quickly, a lot very quickly? And that was the exciting part for me. But then we hosted the first workshop in a different city with, I think, 40 people. And it was me and her facilitating it. And we had a bartender, which was also a friend. And so it was a huge weekend. I think we turned over that weekend like over 10 grand. and I was like,
Oh,
the numbers checked out, and I was seeing all the people in the workshop, and then also working with friends. I was like, oh my gosh, like that feeling. I was exhausted, extremely tired because we traveled, packing everything, and doing the workshops. As an introvert, that was very exhausting for me.
yeah.
But I finished and I had like this sense of satisfaction, of fulfillment that I've never had before. I was like, whoa, I could do this for the rest of my life and I'll be happy.
Wow.
So it
Oh,
was so magical, and I loved it. Of course, like there was the first workshop. So there's been many other instances where I'm like finishing a workshop being like, oh my gosh, fuck my life. Why am I doing this? Because it comes and goes.
yeah, totally.
But yeah, I totally feel you. Like the first workshop was quite magical. So
Yeah.
they definitely ring a bell for me as well, in terms of
Yeah,
my
I think
journey.
it's just so amazing. And it could be anything, but when you have the chance to be in your purpose, which is another thing I talk about a lot with Art Girl, because we're doing art, but we're also facilitating and coping with change. We're thinking about changing habits. It's a lot of like deeper introspective work that happens, especially in my membership program. And when you get to a place where you feel you're in your purpose, then that's like the most
Magic.
magical thing ever. There's no amount of money or whatever that like compares to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
feeling.
100%. 100%. I agree with that. 200%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really magical. And I find it like quite hard to, because of course, like we do live in a capitalist society and you do need money, to pay your rent and things. And that's where I've struggled with trying to have, like, continue that feeling of doing things purely based on like your purpose and what you want to do, then to slash, also make money.
It's
And
so hard.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's a constant struggle in my life.
yeah, yeah. Especially because you are based in New York, right?
Yes, based in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's also part of like one of the reasons that I just absolutely am in love with you. Because I find like when I think of the work that I do in, I mean, I'm not in a small town. It's kind of a medium-sized town. But when I think of the work that I do, like if I went to a city like New York, I think I would feel just so lost because it's so big. But then
Yeah.
finding people like you, like, you feel so approachable and like you're making it work in my mind. It's like, how do you make it work in New York City? It's like one of the most expensive cities in the world, one of the most sophisticated markets in the world. So to market something in New York City, like I cannot even imagine. Like I don't totally think that what I do in my city, if I went to New York, it would happen straight away because it's such a different reality. But then I see people like you doing it, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. But you're also
You
local,
would.
so you've
You
been
would
there
make
for a
it
long time.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I find it, yeah, fascinating.
I
Um,
think really quick on that point,
mhm.
I actually think that's part of the reason why Art Girl and other similar collectives that are starting to pop up in the city are so vital because there are a lot of people that move to New York for whatever reason and they're in their early 20s or maybe they're older than that and have moved
Mhm.
here for whatever reason, for a work or a relationship or something. And New York is a huge, vibrant city, but it can also be so lonely and
Lonely.
isolating. So having space like an art girl workshop where you can go and meet people and there's no pressure to drink a lot or like pay a big bar tab or order an expensive dinner. It's just making art creates this like safe, cozy container and the consistency of the workshops is really helpful because and I have so many examples that just are so amazing of girls that come. They come. I had this one girl. I love her so much. She comes to all of the workshops, and she
Oh,
met this other new girl came to a workshop. It was her first time. She had just moved to New York. They met at one of our workshops, and then while we were doing the workshop, they're chatting, they're really hitting it off, and then they both bought tickets to another workshop that was coming up to like go on a friend date again to
oh,
another workshop.
cute.
And that's just one example of like this, that happens a lot, because when you're creating something and like having a shared experience, it's so much easier to build stronger connections. And the piece about connecting to yourself is also really key, because at the end of the day, we can only connect to others as deeply as we've connected to ourselves. Like, you have to know yourself first. And that's what happens in the workshops. It's like there's always a bit of reflection, there's always a bit of introspection and self-understanding that comes through that will help you share who you are in an authentic way, in a like judgment-free zone, so you can meet people who actually align with you in a deeper, authentic way, rather than, you know, having a shared interest of like taking a shot at a bar and then you forget what happened the next day. Like, not to say, which I'm like, I'm all for going to bars, I love it, but that's like, if you're trying to make friends and deep connections, it can be really hard to just go to a bar and hope you meet someone, you know?
Yeah. And you can do both. Like, you can go to a bar and then you can go to a workshop.
Yeah.
Or you can go to a workshop and then go to a bar. Like, you know, they're not
Absolutely.
mutually exclusive,
That's
but
like,
I totally
hopefully
feel
that's what
you.
people are
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that it's like a component of, you know, we are on social media so much and people like feel disconnected in general.
Yeah.
So I'm in my opinion, or what I'm kind of seeing, is that reverse back to in person, especially after the pandemic. Like, there's so many people gravitating towards, you know, in person events. So yeah, it makes total sense. And I cannot wait to go to an Art Girl workshop. So Art Girl started as a newsletter, and then you quickly moved on to workshops.
Yeah, I kind of, after that first one, it was called Coloring Club, and it was
Cute.
really, I know, it was so cute. I was like, we'll just try it and see what happens. But it was amazing. So I ended up doing Coloring Club as a recurring event series, and that was really the only event that I was doing. I still at that point was like trying to put decks together and figure out if I could, because in my mind at that point, I kind of was like, I will never be able to make money just doing community events,
Yeah.
which now I know is wrong. but,
Yeah.
but at that moment, I sort of was like, I don't want this to be the main thing. But I mean, I'm so grateful to my friend who opened his restaurant to me, because it let me try stuff, and it reminded me what I remind myself all the time as my business evolves and changes. You have to like try stuff before you're ready. Otherwise, you're just never gonna do anything new. And
Yeah.
that is like a ethos that I really connect with, and that's what happened with Coloring Club. Unfortunately, my friend closed his restaurant after I'd been doing workshops there for a while, but right at that same time, there were other venues that were starting to like say, hey, and this was also like prime post-COVID time, where we still were like figuring out in New York City like how we were reopening and what the city was gonna vibes were like. And so a lot of venues wanted and still want people to help bring people into their establishment. And I saw two things happen, which was that I was like getting requests to come and bring the community there. And I started to see the Art Girl community building. And that was a thing that I didn't, you know, I'm part of all these like community builder in New York, like circles now. And it's so funny because I didn't even know I didn't know what that was. I didn't know the term community builder, but I noticed through my work how important that connection piece was, like we were saying. And I think like trusting my gut intuition, which was that this is what the power of this is, which is the connection of that people want together, and following through on that, even though it kind of was like opposite from what I thought I was going to be doing, which was like the corporate stuff, helped me, I don't know, build it to what it is now, and like hopefully will keep growing, because the community is actually what I really love the most about it, and what I think people connect to the most is like the community of people that you can connect with over this shared interest of creative self-care. And those things are way more important than, you know, whatever else I thought I was going to be doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, and I think like that's the magic. That's the so if there's anything as a secret sauce, like that's the secret sauce. It's what keeps people coming back, and it's what will allow it to grow. I feel
Yeah.
like when I started my business, I didn't focus on community, to be honest. Which feels like quite confronting to confess. But I've talked about it previously. My main focus was like, well, I want to make this my full-time gig, so I need to, like, the numbers need to pay my bills and it need to check
Right.
out. So community wasn't my focus, but it has evolved since that first time of being like, okay, if I want to build this bigger than me,
Yeah,
I can only do that through community. There's no other way.
totally.
So I totally feel you, and I think that's also when venues they reached out to me to have my workshops in their space, like that's what people come for. It's like, oh, she can move people, she can bring in
Right.
people. I
Yeah,
think that's the rare thing. So
totally.
I totally feel you. So okay, so article side is a newsletter, and then you moved on to workshops. It is that is that how it is functioning now, or has
So
it been
now, yes.
bigger?
So now we have, I've been through like a lot of iterations of how I do the workshops. Like I'm sure you can
Yeah.
relate to that. But I love the community workshops. I've done a lot of free workshops where brands sponsor them. I've done a lot of like high ticket price workshops that are like retreat style. I've done
Oh.
like workshops where you make a specific craft, and all of them have been like successful in their own ways, and I've learned a lot from all of those things. Now my in-person event like model or strategy is process oriented creative workshops. So I have this one called Bad Art Night. It's my favorite, and it's really exactly what it sounds like. It's a like kids art class for adults essentially, where you come in, we do some little creative exercises. There's lots of laughing, there's lots of like not taking yourself so seriously, and usually I set some kind of goal during those workshops, like this, you're going to make at least 5 pieces of art, and they don't have to be good, but I give prompts. There's lots of guardrails to help, because there's nothing more intimidating than a blank piece of paper and
Yeah.
an art teacher saying draw whatever you want. You're like, what? That's
What?
impossible.
Yeah.
So
I
we
feel
add a
you.
lot of
Yeah.
constraints and that kind of stuff. And then um, they also really lend themselves to connecting with other people, because it's silly and you're sort of, nobody is meant to be making anything that's like Picasso museum worthy. I'm using quotes there. But then what always happens without fail is that everyone ends up with something that they love. And even if it's not like, oh, I love this, I'm going to frame it, it's like, I love a piece of this and it inspired me in this way. Or, oh my gosh, I like had a big unlock
Did it.
about
Yeah.
this life problem I'm dealing with while I was creating this through conversation and creative expression. And it's really like fun and nourishing. So I do more workshops that are that style.
Yeah.
And then Art Girl also has a membership program, which is so much fun. It's like a global community where you can join the platform. There's different tiers of membership, so you can join for free, and we do daily prompts just to help people get into the habit of creating and expressing themselves. Then you can join as a bestie, and then the besties get lots of discounts on things. They get giveaways, they get extra like creative resources to help with that creative self-care stuff that I've been talking about. And my sort of model with the membership is, it's a place where people can further their connection to self and community in between the live workshops. The membership also has virtual workshops in it, because one thing I really want to do with Art Girl, and have not quite figured out how to do this yet, but I want to scale it to be beyond New York City, So how I'm doing that now is with virtual workshops. Hopefully I can bring in-person workshops to more cities at some point, but at this point the virtual workshops are fun and I have people from all over the world that tune in and we
Wow.
talk and make art and it's so special. So those are free if you are in the membership and then if not you can pay for a drop-in.
Hmm.
And the goal again of the membership is just to, so it's a portal where you can like talk to each other, people post their doodles, they can support each other. You are getting into the habit of creative expression and you have the support of other people that all have this like shared interest. So it's for people that are kind of artistically inclined a little bit and are interested in using this as a tool for healing. I always say that actually Art Girl is a wellness company. Like we're really it's the wellness business, but instead of yoga or art or meditate or not art, it is art.
It is art. Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of yoga or meditation, the
Meditation.
tool is
Art.
art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in the free membership.
Yay! Oh,
Yeah,
amazing!
I
I love it.
started. I actually haven't touched it in a couple of weeks now, to be honest.
I
But
know
I
it's
started. I got like a little notebook, and I started just doodling around. Um,
yay! Oh my
and that
gosh,
was
that
like
makes
from
me so
your,
happy.
yeah, that was from your membership because I was like, I have a ton of crafty stuff and materials, but it has to be all organized for the workshops, right? Like everything is in
Yeah.
boxes, and I started realizing like I have all of these creative things that I can get creative with, but because I need to have these organized, the effort of pulling things out to create something sometimes stops me from actually creating it.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, I'm just
Really,
gonna
really
get like a notebook and I just doodle around, and that's still creative.
yeah.
So I started that like at the end of last year.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Because I
I'm not
think that
super consistent, but yeah, I think that it's really cool and helpful.
yeah, that's okay. I think that is
Yeah.
such a common I deal with that too. It's annoying. Like to get stuff out, you're like, you should see my right here on this table. Like I have stuff everywhere. It's like so annoying to have markers and watercolors and pastels like littering my one table in my tiny New York apartment. Like, but that and like I understand that that's not how everyone wants to live their life. And
Hmm.
even me, I'm like, I need to deal with this mess in some way. Like, so if anyone has any tips of how to like organize your personal art supplies, I would love to hear
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But I know, but that's why I've designed the daily doodle prompts to be accessible enough that you don't need to spend a lot of time or have any special materials. Like, and it's
Hmm.
so fun to see if you look in the portal. Some people use watercolor, some people collage, some people have clearly spent a long time to on their response. Some people it's literally like a napkin sketch or like a ballpoint pen in their on a piece of lined paper in their journal like and all are equally valid and good. It's just about
Yeah.
what you in that moment have time for.
Yeah, I totally feel you. It's
Yeah.
so awesome. I think that's the little bit that's sort of where what we do kind of differs because with the workshops side of things, for my workshops, usually like the target market and the people who come to them are not people like artsy inclined at all. They're usually people who have office jobs and a lot of government workers and people who probably haven't touched a crayon since like middle school.
Yeah.
And I still love that they come to the workshops and usually at the start they are a little bit like, oh, I don't know what to do, like I'm not good with this, but then they have a sip of wine and they start creating something, and some people do really awesome stuff at the end.
Yeah.
But
The
even if they don't create like an amazing piece of art, like that's not the point.
totally.
There's
It's
still
about the process.
most people still have a good time, I like to believe.
And I'm sure they do. And I feel like that's always the biggest barrier. Like people don't start. Once you
Yeah.
start, you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I feel good." Like
Yeah.
I'm sure this happens at your workshops too. Like everyone is always in a good mood when they leave. There's
Yeah.
laughing and people feel better and they feel
Yeah.
fulfilled and it's that happens every time without fail.
Yeah, that's the power of creation, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, and
most
that's what I want to say is like it's not because of anything magical that I did with Art Girl. It's because of the innate creativity that's in every person. Like
yeah.
any any type of creative expression is going to give you that feeling if you just let yourself do it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I totally agree. So if you had to, like, percentage wise, if you had to, like, split how much of what you do is like workshops versus your online community membership,
Yeah.
like, which one takes you the most time or that you focus more on, if that makes sense?
Yeah. You know what? It's so funny because it kind of depends on like the month
Yeah.
and the season. But what I will say about the membership is that and it's new. I really only started this membership in June, so it's like only been
Okay.
6 months and
Okay.
I've learned a lot. Things are changing but what I will say about what I love about the membership is that I can do stuff once and then that can, I have 2,000 members right now, but like I would be doing the same thing if I had 2 million members.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from a business perspective, I'm like, that's a cool long-term play that is like really useful for the people because it's like this really
At
juicy
scale, yeah.
place, but it also feels like a sustainable thing that I can keep working on. And also, I will say that I really love working on the membership. Even though it's not, you don't get to talk to the people during events as much, I have connected with like some of the most amazing, truly like creative people. There's this one girl who's a member from the Dominican Republic, and we like DM
Wow.
every day.
Oh.
I feel like she's my friend. Like it's
Yeah.
so amazing. And that is all just because of this like shared interest that we got to find each other via social media. And now we're friends that like have
Yeah.
this shared interest.
Yeah.
Workshops take more time, but I think what's been helpful in the last while, I guess, is systems that make it a little easier. So I have templates for event descriptions. I don't do a great job of this actually because my artist brain gets in the way, but I try to like have a template for event flyers that I share, which always ends up changing, but something so I just kind of know exactly what the steps are that I need to take to get the event going. A big focus of mine this year, which is inspired by partially by you,
Oh.
is systems because I just feel like you are so good at the numbers, the organization, all of that, and I really crave that. I crave that structure, and so that's what I'm working on a lot with the events side of the business, especially as it's changed a little bit from my like old model of coloring clubs and that type of stuff into this new model that I'm using for events, and so that's taking some time now, but I know that it will end up making things easier in the long run, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel you. And yeah, thank you so much. It's very nice of you to say that. I always feel like, you always overthink whatever you're putting on the internet. I was like, oh, do people actually want to know this? Like, is this actually helpful? Sometimes, especially sharing numbers, sometimes I feel like, oh, is this relatable? Like, are people just going to like look at my numbers and be like, oh yeah, it's great for you, but we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm really, I enjoy doing the workshops, but I equally enjoy working on the business in the marketing itself.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed with the workshops is like if I do a lot of workshops, like I just have no energy for anything else in my life. Like I am an introvert, and so yeah, if I do a lot of workshops, which for me to be able to do it full time is a means of income, I do need to make like quite a lot of workshops. So
Right. Yeah.
having people coming on board to help me with workshops so I can focus on like the business side of things it's been really amazing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the next thing I wanted to ask you. Like, are you doing like is Art Girl, as in like working behind the scenes, just you, or do you have any help?
It's just me
Wow.
for
Oh,
now.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it's so funny because yeah, you know what? I'm so lucky because I'm getting to do all of these amazing things, but like anyone, I have moments every now and then where I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have these aspirations? I could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But no, it's me, but I'm actually in the process right now of hiring some workshop teachers, and so I'm
Wow.
really excited about that. It's been because I got I'm my events schedule is like super packed with a lot of really amazing partnerships that are coming up in the fall that I haven't announced yet, but like some really exciting things are coming that have made it possible for me to be able to pay people to help run the workshops. So I actually thought a lot about this and what type of person to hire because on one hand, it would be really nice to have admin support. On the other hand, it would be nice to have people that are able to teach and like help foster the community. I ended up deciding to hire teachers first because this like is unique to me potentially, but I am pretty good at I'm good at I just said I'm not that good at like I know my systems and I
Yeah.
know
No, I know
what
you mean.
yeah, you know what? I'm like, and I know that you have to invest time in training people, and I want to be able to have the headspace to do that in a way that feels fulfilling to them and me when the time comes. And teaching people my curriculum is a little bit of a simpler process. I also have a lot of experience. When I worked in museums, one thing I did was like train educators occasionally, and so that
Yeah.
feels a little bit like I have that skill set already. And I also know that the more I can't teach a workshop every day. Like
No.
I would crumble into a million pieces, even though I love teaching the workshops.
Yeah.
But to your point, if I can have multiple workshops a week and I teach one and someone else teaches one and then someone else teaches another, now we have three workshops that are running that are building the community, that are building the like revenue base so that they can more easily like sustain themselves. And so that's where I am right now. I'm being super candid, so hopefully this is helpful.
No, I think I think that's really helpful. And I don't think there's like a right way of going around growing a business, but
Yeah.
I do agree, or that's how like I feel as well with where to sort of delegate next. Is it the admin that is taking, because I feel like so much of the admin is even though it's admin, it's like admin that drives the business.
Yeah.
And that always feels like, you're driving this car, which is your
Right.
business, and yeah, you can trust it to someone else to drive, but at the same time, like when it's so new, which you've been doing for 2 years, I've been doing it for a year and a half,
Yeah.
you kind of like to drive it.
Yeah.
But the teaching part is like you've nailed it, and now you can trust someone else to do that part while you're
Yeah.
still driving. So
Yeah,
I
and it's
totally feel
almost like
you.
I don't know exactly what like if I had someone helping me with admin, it takes a little bit of effort to say, here's what you can do. And because I'm still so new at it and I'm trying to figure out my systems and I'm trying to figure out the which highway to exit onto, like
Yeah,
that car, it's not quite ready
yeah. No, I
to
totally feel you. I
you know
totally
what
feel
I
you, and
mean?
that's how I feel as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I just hope that people are understanding, and they can, yeah, that they can make sense of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I
it
guess
makes
like
total sense to
hopefully
me.
yeah, I hopefully this is all like I know a lot of your listeners are also like craftpreneurs, like
Yeah.
craft makers and things.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's so interesting because it's sort of new, like especially those of us that don't have a traditional space, and I know you're thinking about getting one, which maybe
Yeah.
that's but at this point there's just no right, there's not really like this is exactly what to do. So for me, I'm practicing like taking educated risks and all the while trusting my intuition. And sometimes you just have that gut feeling that you're like, I shouldn't send that email, or I should say no to that partnership, or I should try to get this again. That's a big part
Yeah.
of my business that I think lies outside of the traditional business advice, which is I I try really hard to be true to my intuition because
Yeah.
I just know that it will serve me right.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. Like, I totally agree with you. And even though, yeah, like I don't think there is a right way of going about it. Even though I do have a program that teaches people kind of what to do, what I'm doing, but the whole basis of the program, like, it's not a business course. It's not, I'm not gonna tell you, do it this way and only this way is right. Like, people can come into the Crafts Workshop Academy, which is well,
Yeah.
it's now a membership as well. There is lifetime, but anyway, I'll teach you like the basics of, like, how to turn this craft into a workshop. But then if you want to go and do it in a totally different way, like, there's no wrong or right. The only thing that I'm a bit more picky and persistent on, it's like the advertising and marketing behind it and like running the ads, because in that regard there is best practices for you to see results. So I am a bit more pushy of, like, no, do it this way because that's what I know that it works. But then at the same time, I know people sell out workshops without running ads.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I don't think that there is one path and you can only go that path.
Yeah.
So I totally feel like making it work for you and trusting your intuition is so important, because you have to be enjoying it. Otherwise, what's the
Totally.
point of it? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's like
Yeah.
no one's forcing you to do. That's what I tell myself all the time. Like,
Yeah.
you like this,
This is
remember?
meant. Yeah. This is meant to be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're so lucky
Yeah.
that this is even though it's hard work and I'm having a big renaissance right now of like you got to do the things you don't want to do so
Yeah.
that later on you can focus more on the things that you really love. That's like
Yeah.
the balance. Every business
Yeah.
owner
That's
needs
it's
to,
part of it. Yeah. That's
yeah.
totally part of it. The other thing that I was going to ask you is how there's like a little social media part of my questions, which I don't know if we kind of
Yeah,
touched
no,
base
social
with
media is
it.
so important for better or worse.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of the people who might be listening to the podcast or follow me or even follow you, they're quite fascinated about, like, selling out their tickets. And I guess that's kind of in line of my question, because you do have a bit of a following, but you haven't always had that big of a following, I assume. So
No, yeah.
if anything you can share around how people find you, I can assume now it's social media, but like, what is your process for selling the tickets? How do you promote it? And like all that sort of, as much behind the scenes as you want to share, really. I think that would be, well, I'm curious, and I'm sure that other
Yeah.
people will also be curious.
It's so, yeah. I mean, I would say 90, 90 to 95% of people find Art Girl on social media, but it's not just my social media, which is what I learned early on. Not even influencers. When I first started, I ran ads. My first workshop, I made a little flyer on Art Girl's Instagram. I think I had like 30 followers and they were all my friends.
Of course.
And but I ran an ad from Art Girl's Instagram account, and like I said, I ended up with, I don't know the exact number, but there were like maybe 7 or 8 people that I didn't know at that workshop, which and for me it was like, wow, that's amazing. Like even having one person that I didn't know find this would have been a huge win. So that's where I was like, oh, Instagram ads are useful. People find
Yeah.
them. But then what I started to notice is that people would say, like, oh, I found this out because my friend sent it to me on Instagram. Or like, oh, I saw my friend posted a story of her at your last event and it looked cool. Like, so then I was like, oh, so the power of social media is so much beyond my following. And, you know, a follower count does not equate ticket sales or
No.
even any type of monetization really. Like the follower count can sometimes be meaningless, you know, like it's good for building community and finding people that resonate with you. And so that's great, but I think social media's power is really in like in terms of this conversation is like finding people, other people that will recommend your stuff too. So then I started inviting influencers. There's a lot of like things to do in New York City, influencer accounts here. And so I invited some of them to come and it was amazing. Like I had this one amazing, who I'm still friends with now. She came to a coloring club right at the beginning. She shared the series and then I was selling out just from that. Like it was really amazing. And it was just one person that made a video that had ended up having like a huge reach. This was actually, yeah, that was probably like a big light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I can use social media in other ways. AKA tapping into other people's social media. And so now I always encourage people to follow, or sorry, to like tag Art Girl when they're at the events. I send my events to a bunch of newsletters. There's tons of like cool things to do in New York, niche things to do. And that is like how people find. So when I say 99% or 95% social media, it's not just my social media. I think that's the thing that I've really learned is like sharing it with people and inviting people. I also I when people are super interested in it that I meet, I'm like at the end of the day, I want my workshops to be full of people who resonate with what we're doing. And because those are the people that are going to tell their friends about it. Those are the people that are going to like, oh, in this random group dinner party, you're interested in self-care. I just went to this amazing event with Art Girl. You should check it out. And that's where I think the other 5% come is from like IRL word of mouth. People share, they'll hear like, oh, somebody like mentioned this in my college class, or like my professor said. I once even had someone say their therapist recommended it, which was amazing.
Wow, that is so cool.
Like I gotta find that therapist and like
Yeah.
work for it.
She probably came to one of your workshops. That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think when it comes to my business, earlier you were asking like where my time goes, and I make a lot of content on social media, and it's fun. It's fun to make content. It's like it's a good way to find people that will resonate with the message. And I do think when I post events now on social media, usually, you know, I post on my stories and I'll usually get a bunch of RSVPs right away. Because I've like built it up to be like, oh, like, you know, that didn't happen at first, you know, but now social media is a tool that I can use to communicate when things are live. A lot of people use newsletters for that. And I just honestly like I can't get it together with my newsletter, even though I started as a newsletter.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, that is funny.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I totally feel
know.
you. I'm the same. Yeah.
It's hard. And I always try to share like members get 15% off, and I always like when it comes to my strategy on social media, I would say I'm definitely trying to get people to come to buy tickets. I want them to come do that. And that's like one thing that I'm doing, but I'm also trying to get people to join the membership. At the end of the day, I want people to follow Art Girl who are intrigued by the idea of using creativity as self-care and like another thing they can use for their wellness practice, because I know that if I'm finding the right people, eventually down the line, whether it's because they're sharing it or they're just seeing it a lot, like they will be the person that ends up buying something or coming to something.
I totally feel you. That's sometimes people come across you and they won't buy a ticket straight away, but then later on they will do. So it's kind of the power of social media. And I think like what you've done is I find it so fascinating because you managed to like create this brand, Art Girl, that kind of serves both the markets, like the in-person workshops and the online membership, which for me that felt like a really struggle at the beginning. Well, at the beginning I started just with workshops and I didn't thought about the membership. But when I thought about the membership, like I couldn't see it being one thing, and that's why I created Crafty Mariana, which is very different to my workshop business, Karma Studios. And I
Yeah.
like to keep it very separated. Like Crafty Mariana is hardcore me. It's like I'm all over that social media because it is me.
It's you, yeah.
Yeah, with Karma Studios, even though when I started I shared a lot of content with me in it, now I try to do that less. I want it to be more like not super unpersonal where there's no people because it's still all about the people, but it's not about me.
Yeah.
But I love that. I feel like you've striked a really good balance of like it is you, but it's also art girl,
Yeah.
and yeah, I really like it. I think that's really really cool what
Thank
you've
you.
done.
I honestly, that's really nice to hear because I go back and forth on that all the time with my
Yeah,
social presence.
no, I
I
think
never know. I know that people connect with people on social. My goal, of course, is that Art Girl is well, and it is. It's a community that I want people to connect with me because they can see, hopefully, they can see that you don't have to be super talented to use art. I'm using that quotes again and with that talented word because I share my art and it's not like anything crazy and special, but that's okay. I think that's like what I really want to show people is you are welcome in this space regardless of what your work looks
background.
like. Like
Yeah,
it's fine. Whatever it looks like is great. And
yeah.
I can kind of model that by showing my sketchbook pages of crazy scribbles.
Yeah, I feel like you are totally leading into my next question, which I would like to do some like a little bit of manifesting and talk about the future of Art Girl.
Okay.
Like if you could describe, it could be very broad strokes, you don't have to be specific, but if you could describe like Art Girl in a year from now, or maybe even 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, like whatever you are, whatever you want to manifest, let's put it that way. But yeah, like if you could like, give us sort of a glimpse of the future of what you want Art Girl to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love manifesting.
Yes.
The goal of Art Girl at the end of the day, there's two things that I care a lot about. One, bringing art into the wellness conversation. And so I hope that in a year or 2 years, the Art Girl membership is really well known. I would love it to have like endless amounts of people that are in the membership program connecting via art as a tool for self-care. And also, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but one, big dream of mine for Art Girl is to have workshops running in multiple cities that all kind of like kind of following I don't know if you know about core power yoga, like not to say that I want to be like them, but it's like
Yeah.
a yoga studio where you can have a membership and then, or just any exercise studio where you can have a membership and you can have it in your home city. But then if you're traveling, you can go to the same studio and you can kind of like go to those classes. And so I am inspired by that model because I think it's helpful for you to maintain your wellness routines if you kind of know what to expect and you know that there's like a place for you that you feel comfortable and that you already understand what the vibe is like. So I'm hopeful that maybe not in a year, but in the future, Art Girl can have chapters where there's weekly workshops running in multiple cities all around the world where you can go and connect over art. So I guess there's two things there: deeper connection to self via art that helps lead to deeper and stronger connections with other people all through art.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It sounds like we have similar in a different way because I feel like our missions are a little bit different, but that's kind of like the dream as well.
Yeah.
To have like other workshops in other cities, that would be
Yeah, I
so cool.
love this for both of us.
Yeah, yeah, it's so awesome. I'm mindful that we're like over an hour time.
Oh my
I
gosh.
have,
Could talk to you
I have,
forever.
I know, same. I know, same. So yeah, I still have like a couple of little things that I wanted to ask you, mostly around like I guess the business side of things, of like how much you want to share about that, like maybe a bit about like what's been like the biggest struggles in terms of the business side of things, or if you do it full time or not, in
Yeah.
like if you have other work, what does that look like,
Yeah.
anything around that.
It is such an honor to be doing this work, but it is definitely also hard. I think one thing that feels hard in this moment is trusting myself enough to be like, I am worthy of doing this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know if every business owner feels that way at some point. I imagine the answer is probably yes, but it
Mm-hmm.
can be really scary, especially when I'm pitching sponsors and I'm trying to get people to join, to like really back yourself. And even though I 1,000,000% believe in what I'm doing, it can still feel really scary and like hard to ask people to
Mm-hmm.
like give me money or like to
Yeah.
explain the benefits of supporting Art Girl as a sponsor, or like bringing Art Girl into your office to do a corporate workshop. Even though I believe in it, it still feels hard. And so that's one thing that I am getting better at and working on. I do Art Girl full time,
Mm-hmm.
but I always say I do it full time because I'm working on it more than 40
Yeah.
hours a week.
Yeah.
But last year I did a little bit less of this, but I have some other like odd jobs that I'll take on like at different points,
Mm-hmm.
because I live in New York City. It's expensive
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the business is growing, and sometimes it's hard to make the numbers work, but I think at the end of the day I have faith that
Mm-hmm.
keeping this going, and again trusting my intuition and building the membership program and building the events systems, and like just keep going with the sponsorships and everything will will support the business long term financially.
Yeah, I think that's such a. I think so many people will relate with that, because that is unless you come from like a trust fund background,
Yeah.
and then business will feel easy and fun.
Yeah, you're like, "Yeah."
Otherwise, yeah, otherwise, or unless you've been doing it, okay, you might not come from a trust fund background, but if you've been doing it for 10 years and you have that sort of
Like
backtrack
a
of,
runway. Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, and you have, built wealth somehow, and now you can do it more comfortably. But the very first few years, I would say that most people will relate with, like, you need to have that faith of like, this is going to work out and I believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, like the imposter syndrome, it always comes out, and sometimes you ask yourself, like, is this really what I should be doing?
Yeah.
But you just have to kind
Sure.
of persevere. And I think the first, like, I share a lot about my numbers, and in when I first started doing workshops, I hit a lot of big numbers, but that's all revenue. Like the profit of it, yeah, I did a decent amount of profit, but I've also reinvested a lot of that back into the business. Like I'm not living in a mansion in
Yeah.
like I'm not, super wealthy and rich whatsoever. Like a lot of what I do is reinvested back, and I think the businesses that live and thrive long term are the ones who do that.
Yeah. That's
So I think
that's
that
how
it's
it is for me too. And it's so
yeah.
funny because sometimes I'm like, oh yes, I did so well this month, and then I'm like, I had so many expenses this month.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Especially with, well, at the moment I have like the workshop business and the online stuff, and I think like the online stuff is becoming bigger than my workshop business, and I'm so mindful of, I'm privileged to be able to do that, but I also don't want my online stuff to subsidize in a way my workshops, and then have this studio where it looks all magical and like, oh, she has on a studio and does these workshops, but I
right.
don't want
Being
it
like
to be like, because of my online stuff I can afford this. Like I want my workshop business to stand on its own.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's been quite, the challenge of like, yeah, I do need to just trust that it will work, the workshop side of things.
Yeah. And also that it takes time. And I think it's hard to predict sometimes. Like most of my workshops sell out, but sometimes they just randomly don't sell well at all. And I don't always have a clear reason for why. Sometimes it's like there was other events that night and
Yeah.
people were like, who knows? But
Yeah.
when it's events, you can't always know for sure. So it's, that part is kind of scary, especially when
Yeah.
that's the lion's share of your income, because you are, there's not a lot, you can't really control how many people, you can a
No.
little by
Yeah.
being strategic with ads and
Yeah.
marketing and all of that, but you can't really like force people to
Yeah,
buy a
yeah,
ticket.
I totally feel you, and I guess like especially at the start, it can get like really scary when like, oh, you only have
Yeah.
two workshops and one sells and the other one doesn't sell, and you don't really understand why that is. Like, there's a lot of things in the background you can do to try to figure out, but at the end of the day, you can never know for sure. Oh, it's because of
Yeah.
this.
And that's where I think consistency, one thing I've learned in this short while that I've been doing it, is that consistency is what will help you
Yeah,
make money. Like you just have to
yeah,
keep doing it because, and
yeah,
it's same with my membership. Like you're not going to have millions of unless you have like a huge, celebrity following on social media or like a ton, like a huge VC backed firm that's supporting you. Like
yeah,
it's going to take time. You just have to be
yeah.
patient.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree with you. We are like birds of a feather
Yeah, I know. This
who
has been
flock
so
together
fun to talk to
online.
you.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Okay, to like conclude, I feel like we covered a lot, and hopefully people will find this helpful and inspiring. But to kind of conclude, is there anything else that we sort of didn't cover that you wanted to talk about? Of course, everyone should join Art Girl. Well, at the very least, should go follow Art Girl on social media, and should definitely check out your online stuff if they're not in New York. And if they are in New York, they should, go to your workshops. But is
Yeah,
there anything else that you would
yeah.
like to add?
I think if I can leave everyone with one thing, it would be that your creativity, like you are worthy of it. And I spent so much of my life feeling like I was hiding my self-expression and didn't think it was worth it to share stuff online or share with other people because they would think it was bad, or like I even thought it was bad. And so my what I would love to leave everyone with is like just start sharing stuff, start making stuff, follow your creativity because it will open so many doors. And even if I know a lot of people listening are creative entrepreneurs or crafty in some way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to start a craft business. But if you commit to your creativity, it will show you where you can go and how you can change your life. And that is like so powerful. And it's available to everyone for free. Like you just need paper and a pen. That's it. So I guess not totally free. But I
Yes.
think that's one thing I've really like learned and connected with and also started to see in members of the community is how effective it is to just start a little and like trust yourself a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. I second all of that. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for being the first interviewee of the podcast.
That was
I
such a
think
delight.
people will love it. I think you will probably get some people reaching out to you with like specific questions.
I
That's my
welcome
guess.
it. Yeah, I'll
Um,
do my best to answer. I
yeah.
always answer DMs eventually. So,
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's always a constant keeping up game. I will also add like your links to your stuff into the like podcast little description
yeah,
thing so that
that'd be
people can
great.
find you.
Cool.
And yeah, I think I just wanted to like do a little social media
Yeah,
thing
let's do it.
and have a little. I don't know how to do this because I'm not very good. Just for social media purposes,
I
I might
love
like
it.
cut that part out of the actual podcast thing.
Perfect.
but yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now,
Okay.
and but
Amazing.
yeah, but don't leave the room though.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna stay.
let's see how it goes.